What's up, everybody? The college football playoff is set. 3 SEC teams in. Why was Bama snubbed? Plus some big names for Bama hitting the transfer portal. We got you covered with it all. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We'll recap a little bit of the Georgia winning the SEC championship game. We'll get into the college football playoff being set. Why was Alabama kept out? Also, I got to ask a question to Kirby Smart about his matchup in the playoff. We got transfer portal madness, more happenings. Alabama's got some dudes hitting the portal. And then later in the show, we'll get into where is the SEC going bowling? All the teams outside of the playoff, where are they headed? But thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. I'm Chris Gordy. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return at FanDuel. New customers place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, let's dive right into it. As Georgia won the SEC championship game over the weekend. Georgia, your 2024 SEC champion, of course, following a back and forth with Texas on Saturday. It was kind of funny how the game played out because all the other championship games sucked. Like the ones on Friday were all pretty lopsided. The other ones early in the slate on Saturday were lopsided. So finally we got a competitive conference championship game. And by the way, the 2 night games ended up being uber competitive as well. But Arizona State rolled Iowa State, Boise rolled UNLV, Army rolled Tulane. So it was finally nice to have a competitive one in the SEC. And of course, for Georgia, they suffered 2 big injuries. One being Carson Beck, their starting quarterback, getting injured just before halftime and not coming back into the game. Well, he kind of came back into the game, but more on that in a second. Then they lost their punter, Brett Thorson, a big weapon. He's one of the better punters in the country. So Georgia trailed 6-3 at halftime, but, you know, it felt like, all right, well, they're still very much in this. Quinn Ewers, he's been interception prone. That came into play here in this one, although Quinn did throw some really good passes. I mean, I got to give a hat tip to Texas. Like Quinn Ewers made some really nice, like when they gave him time to throw, he made some really nice throws. Now, Kelvin Banks, their stud, future first round pick, left tackle, he did not go in this one. Remember, they were saying he'll be a game time decision. He didn't go, but I thought all things considered, Texas O-line did a good job mostly the first, about 2.5 quarters. And then that Georgia pressure really started getting to him. Got to give props to Gunner Stockton, man. He came in, replaced Carson Beck, and he made some decent throws. I mean, he ran the offense, and, with Stockton at the controls, Georgia scored 10 unanswered in the third quarter. They kicked a field goal with 4:32 remaining to go up by 3. Quinn Ewers was picked off by Dalen Everett for the second time in the game. And it looked like Georgia was going to wrap this thing up. Well, instead, Gunner Stockton on a 3rd and 13, I think was just trying to throw the ball away and was picked off by Jahdae Barron from Texas. Longhorns took over. They go down the field. They kick a 37-yard field goal with 18 seconds left, and we're going to overtime. The SEC championship game had never gone to overtime since it began in 1992. So kind of cool there. We got something new. But, Texas settles for the field goal in the first part of overtime, and then Trevor Etienne runs it in from 4 yards out to win the SEC championship. Now, it was crazy what transpired. Gunner Stockton tucks it and runs it, gets a 1st and goal, but he gets hit so hard his helmet gets knocked off. They called targeting. They go back and review it. They ruled it wasn't targeting, but he had to come out of the game for a play. Well, here comes Carson Beck, who can't even lift his right arm, checks into the game, and hands the ball off to Trevor Etienne. And he just juts through right through the gut and scores the walk-off touchdown. But Georgia wins 22-19 over Texas on Saturday night, and Georgia became the first team in more than a century to beat the Longhorns twice in the same season. It goes back to 1909 when Texas A&M did it. But after the game, Kirby Smart said, look, he didn't even have a message for Gunner Stockton at halftime when he took over. He said he let Mike Bobo and the rest of the coaches pump him up. He said, I didn't say one word to him. But he did say after the game, this kid's a winner. This kid's special. He is a winner. So, look, we'll wait for the full diagnosis of Carson Beck. We have yet to hear the official word as of this recording, but it does sound like, it's trending towards he's probably not going to go the rest of the way, like in Gunner Stockton, we trust, if you're a Georgia fan. But shout out Dalen Everett, too. He was named MVP of the SEC championship game, had 2 tackles, pass breakup, quarterback hurry, and those 2 interceptions were huge. Everett's just the 4th defensive player ever to win the award in the 33-year history of the SEC championship game. First one to do it since LSU's Tyrann Mathieu back in 2011. The other 2 to do it, Florida's Ellis Johnson in 1994 and Alabama's Antonio Langham in 1996. So cool, distinctual, category that Dalen Everett gets to go into. Pretty cool stuff there. All right, 3 SEC teams into the playoff and Bama is out. So here's how it shook out with the 12-team playoff being announced. Georgia earned the 2 seed, so they get to sit in the catbird seat with the first round bye. Clemson, the lone Power 4 champion not to receive a bye, picked up the 12 seed. They're going to go on the road and play the number 5 seed Texas Longhorns. So Texas, consolation prize for losing the SEC championship game. You get to host a first-round playoff game in 2 weeks, and they will host the Clemson Tigers. And then the other one, Tennessee gets in at 10-2 as an at-large. They're the 9 seed, though. They're going to have to go on the road and play in Columbus against Ohio State. That is a brutal draw for Tennessee, because even if you go up to the Horseshoe and you beat Ohio State, guess who waits next? Number 1 seed Oregon, who's been a monster all year. So tough draws there. Alabama got left out. SMU lost the ACC title game to Clemson. Clemson got the automatic bid as the ACC champ, but SMU gets in as an at-large. Probably the most controversial selection in the field. Their quality of overall play won out. They did have ranked wins over Louisville and Pittsburgh, but losses to BYU and Clemson in the ACC title game were deemed quality enough to give them a shot at the title. It's their first year in the ACC. And very interesting to hear some of the responses afterwards. Stuart Mandel said, I can't imagine a scenario that would set off Greg Sankey more than this one. Not just Bama, but South Carolina sitting at home while an ACC team South Carolina beat on the road and finished higher than is an automatic qualifier. Well, this is where I think the automatic, like just because you're a conference champion, I don't know. Like maybe we get into a debate where the conference champ isn't just automatically in. Like, again, to me, it should be look at the committee's final rankings. They ranked 1 through 25, right? Just take 1 through 12. Whoever was 1 through 12 are the 12 best teams, most deserving. I don't give a damn if you want a crappy conference. Like, it should be the top 12 teams. You are ranking 1 through 25. Theoretically, 1 through 12 should be the 12 best teams. They should get in. Why are we doing this stupid conference automatic bid stuff? Chris Lowe tweeted out, he said, draw your own conclusions. 3 of the 7 at-large teams in the playoff, Texas, Indiana, and SMU, have a combined total of 0 wins over teams ranked in the playoff committee's final top 25. Look, we'll get to it in a bit. Ward Manuel and the College Football Playoff Committee. Ward Manuel was asked after the selection process by Reese Davis, how close was the final vote between SMU and Alabama? Manuel said he didn't know how close the vote was. He said he doesn't see the actual vote per his own admission. He said, I don't know. I don't know how many members would have had to change their mind to get Alabama in because I'm a member of the committee and I have a vote. I'm leading the committee and talking about the process and what we need to go through and making sure people are committed to opening the conversation and talking about how they see things. But the question is, okay, well, who the hell sees the final vote? You're the head of the college football playoff. Who is seeing the vote if you're not seeing it? So anyway, Paul Feinbaum yesterday, he sounded off on the Alabama Crimson Tide missing out on the playoff. He said, look, I think it was an either or decision. They chose the path of least resistance. Had they gone with Alabama, they would have backed what Ward Manuel said last week. But if they left SMU out, they would have created chaos in college athletics, meaning these conference championship games, how much money they bring in, pride, would just have been shot to smithereens. Being people that represent college athletics, they sat in the room and probably overreacted to SMU's comeback against Clemson. Tied it with a field goal late, lost it on a last-second field goal from Clemson. And he said they probably said we could take a little heat on Monday, but we want to do the actual structure of college athletics, especially how football works in these conference championship games. Nick Saban went to bat, said, I hate to bring this up, but the last time we put a team in, and I'm not comparing this to SMU or anyone else, but I got up on TV and said, hey, look, we lost 2 games on the last play of the game. Somebody else was 12-1 and lost to Kansas State, and we had beat Kansas State by 25 or 28 points, and we would have been favored by that last team by 13 points, and we didn't get in. That was the 2022 season he's referencing when TCU made it in the playoff in spite of a Big 12 championship loss to Kansas State. Alabama did not play in the SEC title game that year and would beat Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl. Lane Kiffin, he was upset, taking to social media, as one does when you're Lane Kiffin. He was upset about Rebels not making the playoff field. Ward Manuel told Reese Davis, I want to make sure everybody understands that we value strength of schedule. This is what he said on Sunday's playoff selection show. Lane Kiffin taking to social media and saying, here's Kiffin's response to that Manuel quote. Is this fake news? He didn't actually really say that, did he? So Lane Kiffin sounding off. All right, so aftermath for Alabama. Greg Byrne posted a lengthy reaction on Twitter, said, disappointed with the outcome, felt that we were one of the 12 best teams in the country. We had an extremely challenging schedule, and recognized there were 2 games in particular we did not perform as we should have. That was the loss to 6-6 Oklahoma and the loss to 6-6 Vanderbilt. But he went on to say, showed Alabama's resume and their wins and all this. And he went on to say, we've said that we would need to see how strength of schedule will be evaluated by the committee. With this outcome, we will need to assess how many Power 4 non-conference games make sense in the future to put us in the best position to participate in the college football playoff. So basically, here's what's happened. A lot of Alabama fans have said, why even schedule tough games anymore? The SEC games are tough enough. Why go out and schedule a road trip at Wisconsin, which, by the way, they won? People are asking, why do you care about that, Alabama? You didn't lose a non-conference game. True, but the path much tougher, right? Like if you're going to go play Notre Dame, or they're opening next season at Florida State, like why play that? Because even if you win at the end of the year, it doesn't seem like this committee's getting together and going, oh, well, you know what? Bama had that nice week 1 win against whoever. They're not even looking at that. And I said this last year when Michigan moved up to the 1 seed when Georgia lost. Michigan's non-conference last year was against ECU and Bowling Green. Like they played nobody decent. And the committee just didn't care. They're like, well, you won, so we're just moving you up. So the message has been sent by last year's committee and this year's committee. Winning a tough or playing a tough non-conference opponent they don't value that at all. So yeah, go schedule 4 Mercers if you're Alabama. Go schedule the Citadel and all this. Now the problem is the SEC and Greg Sankey require you to play a Power 4 non-conference game. But they're not all created equal, right? Like LSU played USC this year. A&M played Notre Dame. Georgia played Clemson. Ole Miss, by the way, they went and scheduled Wake Forest. Like, so not all, Power 4 non-conference games are created equal. So by this letter of law, you still got to keep doing that. I wonder though if Sankey might pull back on that and say, you don't have to do that anymore. Just schedule 4 cupcakes. The SEC schedule's tough enough. And the committee has said, we don't give a damn who you play non-conference. We're not going to give you any credit for it. So it's very interesting. Nick Saban commented on it. He said, look, those are great games for fans to see, those non-conference games. And that's why I think what we should do in college football is create more good inventory for great games that people are interested in. But do you enhance people wanting to do that? What's the athletic director going to do? He may go and cancel all those games now, knowing the SEC is tough enough. I agree with Nick. All right, when we return here on Locked On SEC, we'll get into a little bit of the comments from Kirby Smart on his upcoming matchup, the latest on Carson Beck, and the latest on the transfer portal around the SEC. Bama with some wide receivers exiting. We will get to that coming your way here in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys about our friends over at Omaha Steaks. And nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It is guaranteed to perfection in every single bite. Right now, you could save on unforgettable gifts with the 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, you could score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, you could save 50% off site-wide for a limited time over at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners are going to get the extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. Again, you see the code right there. Look, just vouching for them. I love Omaha Steaks. It's one of the best gifts you can get around the holiday season. Tastes great, easy to throw on the grill. They cook in no time, and the seasoning is just right. Great quality meat. And look, I'm a big fan of Omaha Steaks. So I recommend them. Go check them out. Use that promo code COLLEGE. And again, take advantage of the great offers they have going there over at omahasteaks.com. All right, run along here, Locked On SEC, part of Locked On Podcast Network, covering your teams every day. And before we roll along here and get to the transfer portal, did want to mention some of the coaches' talk yesterday as the playoff announcements were made. And Josh Heupel talked about having to go to Ohio State. Here's what Josh Heupel said. He said, certainly would have loved to have had a home game here for our fan base, but at the end of the day, you're in the playoffs. You're going to play elite competition during the course of this run. We have an opportunity here in week one to go play against a great Ohio State team. We know we got to be at our best. And now that we have an opponent, our preparation starts. It's a great opportunity for us. So, like, saying all the right things, but it does suck for Tennessee to know you got in, you punched your ticket, you did what you needed to do at 10-2. Ohio State also went 10-2, but you got to go play at their house. Oh, what an advantage it would have been if you just could have been flipped. If you, Tennessee, could have hosted Ohio State in Knoxville, how much different that could have been. Kirby Smart also talked with the media yesterday. The latest on Carson Beck. Here's what he had to say. I'm still trying to get that analysis myself. He did have an MRI this morning, but we should get the results in the next few hours. We just had a team meeting. He was there for the team meeting. We don't know how much more than we knew last night as of right now, but we should be finding out something there soon. Basically, he said we looked at it in the locker room. It looked okay, but he couldn't have the grip strength to throw the football. We need to find out exactly what's going on, do an MRI, and look into it. So Kirby basically, saying like, look, they're optimistic, but I don't know. The vibes you get feels like this is kind of it for Carson Beck, that he's not going to return. That's just that Kirby didn't say that. I'm just putting that out there. That's what the vibe I get. But again, Gunner Stockton played well enough. Can Georgia win a national championship with Gunner Stockton? It'd be huge, right? Like, start that legacy. That's your dude next year is going to be your starter. Like, would be outstanding. But this is where the road is tough, man. You're going to face some really good defenses throughout this playoff run if you're Georgia. And got a dominant run game, got a really good defense. Can they lean on that? Can Stockton play well enough to keep their head above water? We will see. But elbow is what everybody's saying on Carson Beck. And even some people out there on the internet saying, Tommy John surgery, whatever. We'll find out all about that in the coming days. Well, I'm sure the truth will come out on what happened with Carson Beck. But did have a chance to ask Kirby Smart yesterday about these two teams in the playoff that they could potentially face. Georgia's in. They got the bye week. They're going to face the winner of Indiana Notre Dame. Here was my question to Kirby Smart.
Chris Gordy, go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, just curious your thoughts on these two teams. How much have you gotten to see them at all this year, and just kind of the challenge they both pose?
Yeah, Chris, I would be remiss if I even commented. I mean, other than knowing Kurt Cignetti and Coach Freeman, having immense respect for both of them and the way they lead their programs. I was on staff with Kurt and have competed against Marcus Freeman in his years there at Cincinnati. So I can't say a lot about them. I really haven't had a chance.
Thanks, Kirby. He didn't answer the question, but look, you're playing one of these teams. You could just say they're both two really good teams, but I get it. Maybe Kirby hasn't watched much Indiana or Notre Dame this year. So anyway, just thought I would bring it to you guys. We asked Kirby the question. Didn't have much of an answer. All right, let's get to the latest in the transfer portal. Portal madness, as we're calling it. Some portal madness happening over at Alabama in the light of them missing the college football playoff. We immediately saw several players jump into the portal. And by the way, Players can officially enter the transfer portal today. There'll be numbers and numbers of guys. Remember last week it started with people making the announcement, the intent to enter the portal, but today's the actual day they will physically enter the portal, and we'll start to see other teams, schools, and coaches reach out to those players and start to see some movement here. But Alabama had a rough Sunday. First they find out they've missed the playoff in favor of SMU. To make things worse, it's being reported that the Tide are going to lose some wide receivers. Kendrick Law and Caleb Odom, both planning to enter the portal. Kendrick Law is a junior, had 10 catches this year for over 100 yards and a touchdown. During the game against Tennessee, he committed a crucial penalty late in that game. But in his career at Alabama, 33 catches, 343 yards. Caleb Odom signed with Alabama and was looked at as a guy that is going to be a big-time playmaker for them. He was the number 53 overall prospect in this past year's class, but wasn't able to put it all together as a freshman at just 7 catches for 65 yards. But he's 6'5", 227 pounds. I heard our buddy Luke Robinson over at Locked On Bama saying, why didn't they try to get him more red zone targets? But in addition to Kendrick Law and Caleb Odom, we told you guys last week, former 4-star wide receiver Kobe Prentice announced he was entering the portal. And it's crazy, too, to think how much this Bama wide receiver room has changed in just over a year. You think about this. Last offseason, they lost Isaiah Bond to Texas, Malik Benson to Florida State, Ja'Cory Brooks to Louisville, Chaz Preston to Tulane, Jermaine Burton declared for the draft. I mean, this is a complete overhaul of the Alabama wide receiver room in just a little over a year. The good news is you have the stud freshman Ryan Williams, who will be a true sophomore next year, assuming he doesn't go anywhere. Jeremy Bernard, the Washington transfer, he will be back for his second season in Tuscaloosa, his senior year. And then you had some freshmen that got some playing time. Cole Adams, Rico Scott. Obviously, they got Derek Meadows in this signing class, so we'll see. But a few other names here. Alabama offensive lineman Miles McVay. He was a 4-star recruit in the class of 2023. He was considered a top 20 offensive tackle. He has entered the portal. On top of that, you had, a couple guys throughout the season kind of announced that they were going to be moving on. Defensive lineman Jaheim Otis redshirted after the loss to Vanderbilt. Linebacker Keanu Coate filed paperwork to do the same thing a couple weeks ago. And cornerback Jaleel Hurley entered the portal last week. He's a former 4-star corner. So Alabama roster overhaul. Kalen DeBoer and Alabama going to have an interesting offseason tweaking that roster. All right, over at Georgia, wide receiver Michael Jackson III entering the transfer portal following their win in the SEC championship game. He spent just 1 year at Georgia, transferred in last offseason from USC, had just 1 catch for 10 yards on the season. Now, Georgia, they're going to be looking to fill up that wide receiver room because Dominic Lovett, Arian Smith, Dylan Bell, London Humphreys, that's who they have going into this postseason. But who of that group will be back? I believe Arian Smith's a fifth-year senior, so he's gone. Got to look at those Kentucky wide receivers, Dane Key and Barrion Brown. Got to think maybe one of those could end up at Georgia. Over at Missouri, former USC quarterback Miller Moss is looking for his new school, and on his initial search, Missouri is in the group. He is set to visit Missouri as early as today, followed by a stop at Louisville, and he may visit a third school along the way. I heard some rumblings, maybe Auburn could be looking at him, but they are going to have to look for an incumbent for Brady Cook next season, Missouri, and Miller Moss will be a big-time proven player from USC. Kind of like Jackson Dart, right? Started at USC, transferred to Ole Miss. Very productive there. We'll see if Miller Moss ends up doing that at Missouri. All right, let's run through some more of these names that entered the portal in the last few days. Auburn wide receiver Caleb Burton going to enter the transfer portal. 5'11", 180 pounds. Will have 2 years of eligibility remaining. Remember, transferred in from Ohio State 2 years ago. Had 220 yards 2 years ago, but just 2 catches this season. Over at Ole Miss, quarterback Walker Howard entering the portal. He started his career at LSU. He's a former top 50 recruit. Jackson Dart's career is over next year, but the redshirt freshman Austin Simmons projected to take over the reins next season in Oxford. I heard some rumblings Walker Howard may go back to Louisiana at one of the smaller schools in the state. Not LSU, but one of the other schools, ULL, something like that. Also, Ole Miss offensive tackle Kavion Broussard planning to enter the portal. He committed to Miami back before he flipped to the Rebels. and now he is on the move. Over at Texas A&M, bunch of names. Linebacker Marshall Harris entering the portal. Former 4-star recruit, had 2 sacks over the last 2 seasons. Linebacker Chance Johnson, he's on the move. Wide receiver Micah Tease, he will have 3 years of eligibility remaining. Former top 10 athlete in the class of 2023. And then edge Anai White, 6'5", 260 pound edge, will have 3 years of eligibility remaining, was ranked as a top 45 recruit in the class of 2022. Over at Arkansas, their star tight end Luke Haas is entering the portal. He had 250 yards as a freshman before he suffered a season-ending injury. This past year, 26 catches for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns across 11 games played. Also at Arkansas, defensive lineman Nico DeVilliers entering the portal. He's had 36 tackles and 2 sacks in his career. Put up some good numbers for them this year. Arkansas starting offensive lineman Joshua Braun entering the portal. I believe he was the starting right guard, so that is a big loss for Arkansas. And then DB Dallas Young entering the portal, played very sparingly this year. One other one for Auburn that we missed, safety Caleb Wooden entering the portal, had 41 tackles and 2 interceptions in his career. How about a Vandy? Some big ones here. Gunnar Hansen going to enter the portal, the starting left tackle at Vanderbilt, 6'5", 325 pounds, started 37 games in 3 years with the Commodores, was named Offensive Lineman of the Week, Outland National Player of the Week this season, will have 1 year of eligibility remaining. He went to SEC Media Days for them. So that's a big one. If I'm a Vandy donor, if there are some out there, get an NIL check and write that kid a check. If not, that's a huge, your franchise tackle right there. Grab through the portal. Vanderbilt defensive lineman Devin Lee entering the portal, made 14 starts, 34 tackles, 4 sacks in his time with the Commodores. He'll have 1 year of eligibility remaining. Over at Oklahoma, starting tight end Bauer Sharp will enter the portal, 6'4", 245 pounds, had 42 catches for 324 yards this season for Oklahoma. He led them in receptions and yards. Remember, they had all his wide receiver injuries. He was the leader in those 2 categories. He will have 1 year of eligibility remaining. Tennessee cornerback Jordan Matthews, he enters the portal, was a 4-star in the class of 2023, was ranked a top 15 corner in that class. He'll have 3 years of eligibility remaining. Tennessee linebacker Jalen Smith going to enter the portal. He had 34 tackles this year, played in all 12 games for the Vols. He'll have 3 years of eligibility remaining. At Kentucky, offensive lineman Ben Chrisman has entered the portal as a grad transfer. He's a former Ohio State transfer and 4-star recruit. And then over at Texas, this is a recruiting tidbit. They picked up big 5-star D lineman Justice Terry on Friday. 6'5", 275 pounds from the state of Georgia, chose the Longhorns over Georgia, ranked as the number 2 D lineman in the class of 2025, according to On3. And one more note, want to send good wishes to TJ Finley, former LSU and Auburn quarterback. He is back into the portal. He played for Texas State 2 seasons ago, played at Western Kentucky this past season. He will be looking for his 5th team. We had him on the show a couple times over the years. I really like TJ Finley. Wish him the best of luck. We'll see where he ends up. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode presented to you by our friends at FanDuel. Look, get ready to tackle all the football action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app going to give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check it out at FanDuel.com and get signed up today. You will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And look, they got all the college games up there as well. I was just looking at some of the early betting lines and some crooked numbers. If you like Texas minus the 14.5 against Clemson, that's up there over FanDuel. Ohio State around a 6-point favorite over Tennessee. That is up there for you as well. If you want to take advantage, that's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, roll on here. Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We've got a ton of the show to get to. So before we get to the bowl games, we're going to run through the SEC teams that did make the playoff and where they're going bowling. They want to get to one news nugget here over at South Carolina. Dahl Loggins, the South Carolina offensive coordinator this season, has officially left. He'll be the next head coach at Appalachian State. Comes on the news that he was being targeted by them, and then they officially went ahead and announced it. So he'll take over for Sean Clark, who left after posting a 5-6 record this past year. Clark coached the Mountaineers to 10 wins in 2021, 9 wins in 2022, but they have since fallen off. Now, Loggins has had some extensive stops in the NFL along the way, prominently worked as offensive coordinator, and this new gig with App State will be his first stint as a head coach. So, again, big loss there for South Carolina. Posted, some great numbers there on offense this year with Lenore Sellers under center. South Carolina's won 6 straight games, but best of luck to Dahl Loggins over at App State. And now South Carolina's got to find their new OC. We'll see where Shane Beamer goes to find his new offensive coordinator. Got to think a lot of people be interested in that job with Lenore Sellers coming back as, a redshirt sophomore next year? Talented dude. All right, let's take a look at the SEC and the other bowl games that they are headed to in December 20th. That's coming up in just less than 2 weeks. We'll have the Gasparilla Bowl. It'll be Florida versus Tulane down in Tampa. Then the week on December 27th, we've got a bunch of SEC teams playing. We got the Armed Forces Bowl will be Navy against Oklahoma. The Liberty Bowl in Memphis will be Arkansas versus Texas Tech. Arkansas has been to that Liberty Bowl. It feels like every time they get bowl eligible. Birmingham Bowl in Birmingham, this is actually a hell of a matchup. Vanderbilt versus Georgia Tech. You talk about two dudes that, are warriors. Haynes King, the former A&M quarterback, who was a workhorse for Georgia Tech, nearly pulled off the upset of Georgia. And then Diego Pavia, who took the college football world by storm in his 1 year at Vanderbilt, making them bowl eligible in just one season there. So pretty that game's very appealing. If you live in the Alabama area, why not go buy a ticket, go watch Vanderbilt versus Georgia Tech? And I saw Clark Lee said they got a chance to finish with a winning season for the first time in a decade. He's like, these kids want to play in this. It matters to them. So kind of a cool thing to really as much as we see guys like opting out of bowl games and I'm out of here, peace out, deuces. The Vanderbilt dudes that are still there, they all want to play in this game. And again, Diego Pavia, go ball out, bro. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. At Texas A&M, we will see them and USC in the Las Vegas Bowl. It's kind of funny. USC opened the season with LSU in Las Vegas, and there were some rumblings that they were kind of leaning towards maybe that same matchup. But, you can't repeat the season opener in the bowl game. So, luckily, they didn't take LSU. A&M goes to Las Vegas, and A&M will get a taste of what LSU had in the opener. Go play USC out in Las Vegas. ReliaQuest Bowl on New Year's Eve will be Alabama versus Michigan, a rematch of the playoff game a year ago where Michigan beat Alabama in overtime. Funny thing is, too, I didn't realize this. Michigan beat Alabama last postseason and Kalen DeBoer last postseason. Remember, they beat Washington in the national championship. So Kalen DeBoer and Alabama both looking for retribution against Michigan. Now it's different. Jim Harbaugh's gone. It's Sherrone Moore. And this Michigan team went 7-5. Alabama should win this game, but we haven't heard yet. But this seems like maybe a game Jalen Milroe will opt to say, you know what, I'm going to go prepare for the NFL draft and not play in this game. We'll keep an eye on that. Music City Bowl on the 30th will be Missouri against Iowa. Nice little swan song there for Mizzou to get a 10th win. Iowa's defense very good, though. Texas Bowl will be LSU against Baylor. LSU gets to play their former defensive coordinator, Dave Aranda, who was part of that 2019 national championship game. Cheez-It Citrus Bowl will be South Carolina versus Illinois. And then the Tax Slayer Bowl on January 2nd will be Ole Miss versus Duke. That's like as far as sexy matchups for Ole Miss, Duke. The good news is there for Ole Miss should be able to get a win in that one. One more note here. Shane Beamer pointing out that he was talking with the media yesterday, and it's kind of understood, in terms of the selection process now, after the playoff games are selected, the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl has the next pick. And Shane Beamer up at the podium yesterday saying, look, they chose us, and that is a strong statement, basically pointing out they chose South Carolina over Alabama and Ole Miss. They chose the Gamecocks. By the way, that'll also be a former Arkansas head coach Brett Bielema at Illinois with former Ole Miss quarterback Luke Altmaier under center for Illinois. But Shane Beamer tweeted out, he said, come on, Gamecock Nation. Let's take over Orlando with Garnet and Black. This will be an awesome trip and great place to visit for a game. Come on down and send out these seniors the right way. So there you have it. That is the latest news going on around the conference. You want to make sure you are locked into Locked On SEC all week long, guys, because we are going to be keeping you up to date on all the latest news with transfer portal. We got tons of happenings happening each and every day, so make sure you keep it locked right here to Locked On SEC. Thank you for making us your first listen. Now you'll make your second listen. Let's check out our buddy Chris Marler, does Locked On Gamecocks. We talked a little bit about them here this last segment, and see what Chris is talking about over there with the Gamecocks. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. Come on back and see us.